Good morning. Hope everybody had a good night's rest last night on a Monday and is ready for a Tuesday. This is our 7th day in our Psalms of Ascension, 15 days to step up, 15 days of redirecting our heart away from the chaos of the world around us toward God. And this same thought and idea as the pilgrims who traveled from wherever they lived to Jerusalem at the times of the appointed feast, and they sang these songs so that as their feet walked, their hearts would be lifted to God, and as they got closer to Jerusalem, they would be drawing nearer to God. So when they got to the city, when they got to the temple, not only were they physically there, but their hearts were ready. And today we're going to look at Psalm 126. It is a psalm of distress, but this is distress, lament mixed with praise. Because in Psalm 126, which was probably written when the exiles left Babylon and came back, when Ezra and Nehemiah were coming back to rebuild the temple, to rebuild worship, to rebuild life in the community, life together again, and together with God in the land. When that remnant returned, this psalm was probably written, and you can read that story in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. But Psalm 126, and let's read it. And the ESV has the tag, "Restore our fortunes, O Lord." When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with shouts of joy. Then they said among the nations, "The Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad." Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. Now this psalm, broken up into 3 parts, or 2 main parts, but there's 3, themes devotionally we can look at for this psalm. Verses 1 through 3, it's a praise to God as they recall past deliverances when they were like people that people dreamed of, with God blessing them and God working in their nation and them as people, and they longed for that day to return. Verse 4 is a lament. It's longing for God to bring back the nation's fortunes. Now, fortunes and prosperity in the land with God doesn't just mean wealth, power, or status in the world. It means you have those things. You have prosperity, wealth, peace. You have all those things. But it's because of God's power and God's presence in the people that energizes them. It's because they're living in communion with God. It's not a prosperity gospel, because this doesn't cancel suffering. It just means their overall national image was people who are blessed of God. And that was life in the land. And it was energized by his power and presence. That's what they long for. And that's what they're crying out for. The lament is like the waters in the rains. When it rains, when the former and latter rain comes, those rains come and the water rolls, and the old dry riverbeds fill up to be streams of water, flowing streams of water, streams of living water that make the land fertile. So God, be merciful and do that, but also do that to our spirits. Do that to us so that we would reap a harvest of joy. Now, the request is for the future. It's the last verses 5 and 6. And so their spirit would be watered just as the land's watered. So these things are connected. Now, the ultimate application that we would come to in our context would be, a lot of people would go straight to America. Well, this would not apply to us as a nation because we're not a covenant people of God as a nation. But his church is. And the people of God in his church, us. So think about this in the context of where we are. This was written when they're coming out of exile. One day, we're going to come out of this, and we're going to get to meet again as a church. One day, people are going to return to their houses of worship. And this central thing we've been missing about who we are and what we do is going to be restored. It's going to be a big day. Just like in this psalm, that the return from Babylon was a day their children had heard about would one day come. A day their children would never forget, a day they would never forget, a day they had dreamed for, they had prayed for, and it's happening. That'll happen one day, and we'll return. And that's a day that will be a day to celebrate, and a day that we ask God, we seek God to return in our midst in a powerful way and rain down his mercy on his church and on our dry spirits, that we might not just gather back, but we might gather back brand new to do something for God to do something in and through us. So we're kind of in the middle of an exile here. Maybe we should spend some more time lamenting the fact that we so often took church for granted. We just assumed we were going. We took it for granted, or we assumed that when or if we ever decided we wanted to go, we could go. It would always be there, and now all of that is gone. Seek the Lord while he may be found. And then sowing seeds and tears. The exile begins in tears. God give you the boot. You're out. Evicted. It's a sad thing for God to kick his own people out of the land because they don't live up to their end. But those who longed for it while in exile, those who longed for it to come back, those who longed to be the people of God again in the land of God, living in the blessing of God, giving testimony to the goodness of God, those people who longed and who mourned for a return to those days, the seeds they sowed in tears, now will they reap a harvest of joy. The seeds that they sowed, well, now they reap a harvest of joy. Looking to the future, what you have done before in the past, will you do it again? And what you have done it with a seed that would start it all would be our strong desire to return to be your people, living under your blessing in your land with your presence and your power. Oh, but that would be the prayer of the church today, that God would once again stir us. And during this time when we can't meet, when church changes, and we wouldn't look to return to the old, we would look for God to restore us so that we live a new life with new energy, with new purpose, in a renewed land. The same places, but different spaces. The same people, the different heartbeat. The same mission, but with a new focus and determination. All directed toward Christ and doing what the church should do. Pray for that. Seek it. I hope you have a good day, and I hope this will be a blessing to you. See you tomorrow.